Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Biohacking Beauty podcast, your trusted source for insights on beauty, wellness, and self care in the world of science and technology. I'm your host, Amitay Eshel, co founder and CEO of Young Goose, the biohacking skincare company. Today, I am on basically the second half of our conversation with the very special Rachel Varga. She's a board certified aesthetic nurse specialist and a best selling author with a decade long career in aesthetic medicine. Rachel has worked with an impressive roster of clients from celebrities and CEOs to royalty, helping them rejuvenate their vitality from the inside out and obviously have it expressed in their skin. Our conversation today really will shed light on some of the aspects of the way that an environment drives skin aging. We started this conversation a couple of weeks ago, but it was so interesting. We wanted to make sure that we provide more value and divided it into two episodes. So I'm very excited to share with you this segment, which is the second segment, where you would really learn how blue light, microorganisms, food, and emotions affect your skin and drive aging, and then you will learn how some strategies to mitigate each and every one of those factors. So if you haven't listened to the first part of our conversation, I would highly recommend it. But this episode is also a standalone episode if you so wish to listen. Before we dive into our conversation today, first I want to share a review from one of our valued biohacking beauty listeners, and this is from Heather. She writes that the podcast has changed completely the way that she treats her skin and her health, and that the science-based approach of this podcast has driven her to new heights and achievements in her skin journey. So that's very, very great to hear. Thank you very much. If you haven't done so already, we would greatly appreciate it if you could take 2 seconds out of your day to leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Even a one-word review would be amazing, and your rating and reviews greatly help the growth of this podcast, which enables us to educate more people. Okay, now let's dive into our conversation with the incredible Rachel Varga. All right, Rachel, welcome. Welcome back. Obviously, this is a part two of our conversation about your incredible paper about environmental stressors and our skin and skin aging. And we were so geeking out about your strategies and your understanding about it last time that we had to split it into two. So obviously, first of all, incredible to have you again. Thank you very much for joining me.
Always a pleasure, Amitai, and it truly is my passion to help people achieve and receive the best hair, skin, nails of their life, slow cellular aging, and increase your energy, as well
Mm-hmm.
as cultivating something called radiance. So I'm sure we'll wrap up with some really key emotional and psychological and energetic stuff, right?
Yeah.
That icing on the cake,
Mm-hmm.
and get into some more nitty-gritty details on blue light, EMFs, detoxing, all that
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And I'm doing a detox right now. And let me tell you, every time I do it, I'm so glad that I do
Yeah.
it just to stay pure.
Yeah, absolutely. That definitely, I would want to cover it like in the end, as far as like different strategies that you like. But first of all, I have like a little question before we dive into the specifics. Do you ever communicate when you talk? Obviously, you are a very prolific speaker on stage. You're going to be a speaker in the biohacking conference, which is probably I call it the Super Bowl of our industry. Um, And obviously, I heard you speak before. Do you ever mention that 80% of skin aging is extrinsic, is driven from the environment? Is it something that you like to repeat to people, or do you feel it's unnecessary information? How do you view it? Do you think it resonates with people?
Well, I wouldn't be able to put a percentage on it at this very moment. However, what the research is telling us that I reference in my article is that, I hate to say it, death of unknown cause doubled from 2019 to 2020 in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And what that tells me is that environmental toxins are much higher than they once were in air, water,
Mm-hmm.
lighting, electromagnetics, organisms, as well as with our thoughts and
Yeah.
consciousness suppression, actually, that goes along with that.
Mm-hmm.
And our genes, I just published an episode with Dr. Patrick Porter from Brain Tap,
Absolutely.
and he was sharing that our DNA is constantly replicating. It has the ability to repair itself. And then the expression of that is the epigenetics. Now, we can modulate our genes and our epigenetics based on the environmental toxins that we're exposed to through
Yeah.
our personal care products, as well as the air, water, lighting, electromagnetics, and organisms that can develop in us. All those contribute.
Absolutely. I mean, the first thing, if someone doesn't understand epigenetics at all and like the way that our genes interact with the environment, I think, I don't know if like it would resonate with everyone, but the example I like is our rabbits in the winter becoming white rather than, brown. I mean, the, we have mechanisms within us that really allow us to either adapt to the environment, but also some that the environment can, in air quotes, like hijack, and it would obviously lead to bad effects. We obviously use it, in skincare. Often we use things that upregulate genes. We use obviously resveratrol is probably the most kind of famous one, right? That induces DNA repair, but we use it in almost every formulation. We ask ourselves, okay, what do we want to ask the body to do on an epigenetic, on a genetic level, and we really go from there. Which I think is very important. And you did mention the environment since 2019. And obviously, we can splice it to a lot of different effects. But if we really look at the fact that people are in a closed environment more than they were in the past, which is negative all across the board. I think we should start, as far as the effects on the skin, with the effects of blue light, because blue light is something that, I mean, it's almost like a mirror of our modern life. The amount of blue light we're exposed to, as opposed to the amount of blue light that our bodies evolved to be exposed to. So, to someone that doesn't really understand why blue light is bad for us, and it doesn't look very harmful when we just glance at it, right? So, why is it so harmful?
What we're seeing in the research is that blue light is just as damaging to the skin as UV rays from the beautiful sun. I love getting sun on my body. I had a beautiful day in nature just the other day with, eagles and seals and owls and deer and sea lions. It's incredible. I love my nature days and getting outside and getting that grounding in and natural sunlight. When it comes to blue light, it is everywhere. Halogen incandescent lights have been replaced with more modern, cost-effective, energy-efficient blue lights. And we often think, oh, well, we're working from home, we're inside in the office, we don't need to put antioxidants on our skin or sunscreen. You need to think again, because what blue light does is it contributes to oxidative stress on the skin the same way that the UV light does, except we're getting more and more and more of blue light. So what this will do, if I'm going to really break it down, is it's also a form of radiation as well. So it's going to
Yeah.
contribute to things like hyperpigmentation, if you have a blemish, sunspots, age spots, loss of collagen and elastin. And I should actually write another paper on the reason for this. Is I postulate that blue lights are also contributing to hair loss on the top of the head as well. Not to mention, blue light impacts the eyes. And because of my background in ophthalmology, eye diseases such as cataracts. One of my girlfriends, she's 44, she needs cataract surgery. What
Wow.
is she doing all day long? She's in front of a computer screen. So the eyes are a highly metabolic structure that are susceptible to different types of ocular diseases. So
Mm-hmm.
yes, we're recording this and I'm wearing my blue light blocking glasses that also have prescription in them too, which makes it convenient for me to work and see properly. And we forget about this. And one of the other reasons why I like wearing blue light glasses is it protects the skin around the eyes a little bit more as well.
Mm-hmm.
The eyes, otherwise known as the periocular area, are the first areas of the face to show signs of aging. So yes, you want your skincare, you want your sunscreen, but you also want to be wearing your blue light blocking glasses to actually not only protect your eyeballs and your corneas, but also to protect the skin and also to help with circadian rhythm balancing. So the
Mm-hmm.
blue lights that we're exposed to aren't just affecting our skin, aren't just affecting our eyes, aren't just affecting potential hair loss, it's also affecting our emotions and our sleep. So this is an example of modern technology convenience that isn't so good for us. So it's really important to understand these things so that you can maybe change the lighting in your home back to halogen and incandescent, which looks so much more gorgeous anyways. If you're ever driving past homes and you notice that some homes look very white and blue with their lighting, and other homes have this beautiful golden glow that's very inviting and very calming, that's what you're seeing the difference in lighting of. So it is something that we need to be aware of. I don't think that things like artificial light forms and also electromagnetics are things that the human body can evolve through. In fact, radiation creates mutations,
Mm-hmm.
and mutations can what then result in dis-ease. So the more able we can purify our environment, air, water, lighting, electromagnetics, and detoxing, that is going to help to slow cellular aging, allow your skin to be as happy and healthy as possible, and for you to feel your best.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't have said it better. Referring to everything as oxidative stress is probably the best way to think of downstream effects of most of the things that would drive aging. That's why we see, for example, that really past SPF 40, if we want better protection for our skin, instead of lathering more or increasing the SPF levels of the product, we are much better off increasing the antioxidant ability of the product. And we can see that that different antioxidants, some of the ones that we like the most obviously are THD, which is a form of vitamin C, or lipochromin 6, which is a very strong antioxidant that's also very good for pollution. They can even double the effectiveness of sunblocks. And obviously, as you masterfully said here, I can't even say the word masterfully. Um, you mentioned the fact that blue light, especially in our what we call high energy visible light, which is just this mutated version of purified blue light that hits our skin so aggressively, really is as harmful as UV light, and no one really talks about. No one really knows it. Most dermatologists are going to tell you how bad UV light is, but then they are going to accept you in an environment. They're going to give you this consultation in an environment rich in blue light, and they're going to send you back home telling you just don't go out to the sun, and you're going to be bombarded with blue light every step of the way.
Well, that's why I love being a researcher. This last paper took me a long time to put
Yeah.
together, and it's the amount that we're getting. And when you hear the word sunblock, there's no such thing as a sunblock. A sunscreen works as a screen. So you put it on the skin, and then the antioxidants help to gobble up the free radicals, the oxidative stress that happens underneath the skin.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when it comes to sunscreen, having one that actually works, I found a few that I absolutely love that I don't burn with, not to mention specific supplements that I take containing specific antioxidants that work as a sunscreen from the inside out, reducing that oxidative stress actually allows even myself with a Fitzpatrick skin type 2. I used to go into the sun and I'd go pink in about 10 minutes. now, I kid you not, sure, I have my skincare on the high real estate areas, the face, eyelids, neck, side of the neck, top of the chest, the hands, the shoulders, and then I'm just not burning anymore. And I absolutely can attest that this is due to having a very low toxic bucket oxidative stress status.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing to consider with sunscreens are the ingredients. So when you go on YouTube and you hear different people talking about sunscreens, and then they point you to their Target or whatever type of link that they have, they're more often than not referencing chemical sunscreen
Yeah.
filters. Chemical sunscreen filters, they typically end with an ANE or an ONE or an 8 in the active ingredients section. These destroy coral reefs. That's why they're banned in many places. And I'm seeing some new ones actually in my one-on-one consultations that go through ingredients that clients are working with. And I've seen some new chemical sunscreen filters start to be used in over-the-counter products. And then when it comes to mineral sunscreen, zinc, titanium, in particular zinc, one of my favorite ones is like a 20% zinc, and
Mm-hmm.
that's excellent. And you don't want to forget about sunscreen on your lips and eyelids. The chemical sunscreen filters will sting the eyes, so if you use a mineral one, it won't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what's important to know about sunscreens. There's chemical sunscreens, and then there's physical sunscreens, and then there's also the concept of the percentage of those in them. And
Yeah.
the chemical sunscreen filters only last for about 2 hours, and then they stop working. In the way that those work, physical sunscreens sit on top of the skin. Chemical sunscreens are absorbed. That's why you're told to put them on before you have sun exposure. And then they gobble up, maybe some of the free radicals underneath, but they're hormone disruptors. They're
Mm-hmm.
adding to the toxic bucket. So not all the information you hear online for free, especially on YouTube from other skin experts, is good, high quality information.
Absolutely. And first of all, I think there are a few things that, first and foremost, any sunscreen that does absorb into the skin, whether it is obviously chemical sunscreens or nano-sized zinc oxide, which we can talk about like why people would nano-size it, we can see traces of them in the brain. And as far as like some four specific chemical sunscreens, they measured levels of them in the brain even 10 years after they have been applied. So that's really mind-blowing. As far as like zinc oxide, that's the one we like to use. That's what we have in our formulations. There is a way nowadays to make it white casting, even if it's non-nano. So definitely, they normally cost more money. We're not saying that everyone should use ours because it's definitely not cheap. But I do love the idea of making sure it is only zinc oxide. And by the way, that's something that another a fatal mistake people do is that they read the front of the label and it says mineral sunscreen, but really, even if it's like 1% mineral sunscreen and the rest is chemical, you can still say, that it's a chemical, that it's a mineral sunscreen. So it's important to see that it really is 100% mineral and not some chemical and some mineral, right?
You brought up two excellent points I'm going to break down here. I would say about 10 years ago, I was meeting with a skincare representative in the clinic,
Mm-hmm.
and she said, "Oh, yeah, we have these, it's nanotechnology to release these actives over time." And yes, absolutely, nanotechnology skincare, it's definitely going to be absorbed much deeper in the body. So the trick with the zinc is micronized zinc,
Mm-hmm.
right? Exactly what you mentioned. And the other thing with sunscreen that drives me bonkers when I do consults for clients looking at their skincare, I'm looking at their BB creams, CC creams, their primers, their moisturizers, their foundations. And more often than not, yes, they're marketed as a mineral, but in fact, they're a blend. And this
Mm-hmm.
drives me absolutely crazy. And a lot of times these individuals are dealing with, my clients are dealing with things like thyroid disease, hormone dysregulation, and then, we got to a huge contributing factor, which are hormone disruptors in
Yeah.
personal care products. So like parabens, phthalates, sulfates, artificial dyes, fragrances that contain phthalates. Sometimes they can be a blend of essential oils. So I check with the
Mm-hmm.
companies what those are. But yes, nanoparticles we do want to be avoiding, as well as blend sunscreens. That was a great point to bring up.
Yeah. So, and obviously we mean nanoparticles within the concept, within the framework of sunblocks or sunscreens, etc. Not necessarily every nano product is bad. I mean, that's as far as that is concerned. But you know, and most of those things, even if you are saying to yourself, I don't actually think I'm exposed to a lot of blue light. EMF is another, thing we are exposed to that exerts a lot of oxidative stress on the skin. So the same way we're going to be using, as to your point before, the same way that we're going to be using antioxidant to negate some of the other effects, that's also a positive effect of antioxidants on the skin.
Yeah, let's dive into EMFs, shall we?
Yeah, please do.
Well, today's a perfect example. I am business on top in this adorable dress with little collar. I look like I could blend in at the country club. And down below, this is a business on top situation, ladies and gentlemen. I have my silver pants on, silver threaded pants on. And the first time that I started to recognize that personally I was sensitive to electromagnetics in my research, I've uncovered that people will become more electromagnetically hypersensitive the fuller their toxic bucket is. Okay. There's lots of research on EMFs now. Dr. Beverly Rubik, RUBIK, referenced two of her papers in my paper. She's one of the researchers that I go to in regards to live blood cell analysis. I also have one of the devices that she uses to test different products, because there's lots of different EMF products out there to help mitigate things. And that's the BioWell. It's European technology using purely on photography. And after 5 minutes of being on your phone, your human biofield, which is essentially, it's a little different from the aura, but this is something that we can actually capture based on the energy that comes off of your fingertips with this little box, and it extrapolates it onto into a computer program, and you can actually visualize the biofield. When you're outside, grounded, barefoot, or you've done a little bit of a technology detox, your biofield will be thicker. And 5 minutes on your phone, your biofield will start to have these gaps and thinner areas, as well as your blood starts to change.
Wow.
So for a lot of you out there who are noticing more brain fog or more redness and inflammation to the skin, or your eyes just aren't feeling great, you're having a lot of extra redness there. In my research, it's very clear. You can actually find open source articles on PubMed looking at the effects of EMFs on the skin, as well as EMFs on the eyes, once again. And essentially what EMFs do is, in the body, 5 minutes after being on your phone, if you were to take a sample of blood, put it on a slide, look at it under the microscope before being on your phone, having like some type of device detox for 45 minutes or so, your red blood cells will be moving like little inner tubes. They'll be bouncing off one another, which means your blood is flowing well, carrying oxygen and nutrients to your tissues and your organs. Hello, the skin being the largest. And then 5 minutes on your phone, those red blood cells start to stick together. They form chains called rouleaux. And then we also start to see clotting factors form. So when you're on your phone and you're not grounded, being inside more, what also happens is an impairment of blood flow to your tissues, as well as an impairment of detoxification of CO2 and metabolic waste products. And I started to clue into this a number of years ago on my off-grid days as an avid, petrol head 4x4 outdoor enthusiast. Don't let the blonde hair fool you, Amitay. You know me behind the scenes.
Yeah.
I started to notice that week my skin was clearer. I had more energy. I was sleeping better. So those off-grid days in the woods, 300 miles out of cell reception, I was the help. I was the mechanic if anything went wrong, which, happened every now and again, or have to help some other fellow trailblazer out there. And I just knew my heart was always calling me to, get out in nature. My body was telling me the the beautiful intuition that I have with my body, which guides me on what to do and what not to do, the more clear you are, the more able you're going to be able to see issues with your skin like rashes,
Mm-hmm.
eczema, stress levels, all of that. Just not feeling well, not to mention electromagnetics interfere with our nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
So we can experience more stress, we can experience those negative thoughts and emotions, which we'll talk more about how we can shift those things. But EMFs is a very real threat to our physiology. It's a form of radiation. So, from your cell phone to your laptop to your wireless phone, in your home, the router, all these things, we have to navigate these things with other types of technology.
Mm-hmm.
And the best ways to navigate electromagnetics is to turn it off at the source. I don't use Bluetooth headsets. I don't use Bluetooth in my car. I will wire my cell phone to the jack in the vehicle so I don't have to use Bluetooth.
Mm-hmm.
And I drive an older vehicle as well. That's an analog vehicle. So when I turn the key, it responds to me as opposed to having a Bluetooth fob with a car that can detect where you're near, and it's a digital vehicle. So actually, when I got my Land Rover, I had an EMF reader with me, and it was really low. It was actually just as low as my previous older Jeep that I had to lay to rest. And
Yeah.
yeah, EMFs on the skin is very real.
Yeah, I think it's important. I mean, you brought up an amazing point as far as those fields that we're constantly exposed to. And what I mean by that, I think most people believe that if they're not using their phone is not emitting any electrical magnetical field. Or if I don't have my, fill in the blank, my computer next to me, then I'm not exposed to these fields. Or if I'm in the car and I'm not using my phone, then I'm not exposed to these fields. And it's important to understand that in order for devices to be connected and to respond at will, to respond when they are needed to respond, what you really have is a constant communication, a constant rays and fields that are being emitted from these devices all the time. So it doesn't really matter that much if you have asked it to do something. It's always trying to do something on its own. But you know, trying to so one of the things that intrigued me the most, as far as what you talk about and environmental stressors, going to something from the digital to the physical to the analog, are microorganisms. So I'm super interested to understand how you view them as far as like accelerators of skin aging, and within that conversation of kind of technology and the present and future, what has changed? But maybe let's start just in general, microorganisms in our skin, what's going on there as far as aging, and maybe we'll go from there.
Yes, absolutely. I would say that before we talk about organisms, let's talk
Mm-hmm.
about EMF mitigation. So
Oh
turning
yeah,
it
for
off
sure.
at the source and then actually wearing silver threaded clothing. And the first time that I slept with EMF protective clothing, there's a few brands out there and I've tested them with my readers as well as testing them with the 8 Sleep, with the Aura Ring as well. The first night I slept in EMF protective clothing, long sleeve shirt, a little underwear, a little beanie. I had a 100% sleep score and my
Wow.
HRV started to shoot up. So I was like, okay, there's something to this. Absolutely. So now I always sleep in either EMF clothing, long johns, a hoodie, or I'm sleeping in an EMF silver threaded blanket. Some companies out there have their weaves with threads that are alloys and they're not pure silver. Sometimes they're
Mm-hmm.
a mix, and they do have varying degrees of how much they can actually mitigate. So we still need to enjoy this beautiful life with technology that we do need in order to perform our daily tasks. And mitigation through wearing materials, I think, is one of the best ways to do it. And it's not just technologies, it's actually the wiring in the homes, because wiring in a home creates a specific type of sine wave.
Mm-hmm.
And nature emits a specific type of sine wave, but the fields in the home can actually be a little bit more garbled and
Mm-hmm.
incoherent and can actually then impact our electromagnetics in our bodies. So, mitigation, clothing, turn things off at the source, stop using Bluetooth headsets, as well as if you do use your phone, just keep it on airplane mode as much as you can. I actually keep mine in a Faraday pouch as well as my RFID chip cards. If you're wearing the Oura Ring, make sure that's on airplane mode all the time. You do that through the app. If you're using something like the 8 Sleep to track your sleep and create temperature regulation, sleep with silver blankets or EMF clothing, those work really well. And this does actually play into things like parasites, organisms, yeast, fungi, mold, parasites, as well as senescent cells that need to get trimmed out. Essentially, what these organisms do is they hijack your body's nutrients. And instead of your body being able to rest and recover during our beauty sleep, it actually can be keeping you up at night and interfering with your sleep and disturbing your body's ability to want to regenerate itself. So as women, we're a little bit more prone to different types of yeast and fungi simply because of our physiology.
Yeah.
As women, we are designed to receive in many beautiful ways. And with men, your physiology is slightly different. And one of the things that I like to do is every single quarter, and yes, I'm doing one right now, is a yeast, fungi, mold, heavy metal, and parasite cleanse. There are many different ways that we can go through detoxing our body from these organisms, many different options and different products and protocols. What I found worked for me, and I'll talk about the skin benefits that I noticed when I started to do this. This was last March. About a week in, I didn't feel so great. However, about 2 weeks in, I started to feel the best that I had ever felt in regards to energy. Hair loss that I had on the edges was starting to come back. I was experiencing less acne. I was experiencing less photosensitivity to the sun, so I could be outside longer. And my nails were growing so fast, and I play guitar, so that was a little inconvenient for me. So you can tell how often I'm playing guitar by how long my nails are. But they are just not breaking. They're not chipping or anything like that. So the skin benefits are very real. When people have overgrowths of these types of organisms and toxins, we can start to see that toxic bucket telling us we're a little too toxic through skin rashes, more acne, hyperpigmentation, melasma, accelerated aging, brain fog, bloating around the waistline. So this isn't something to do, once every couple of years for 10 days. This is something to actually do every quarter. And 80% of North Americans, in my conversations with parasitologists, being on various scientific roundtables that include experts from across the globe, 80% of North Americans have parasites.
Wow.
So 80% of you listening here have parasites. And I had no symptoms. And it took me from last March to December to clear things. And then now I'm doing another round of it this season as well. And it's an ongoing thing.
So what are some of what is, when you say a detox, what exactly do you mean? What I'm aware of that works really well is EBO, um, ozone therapy, IV. Our friend Micah from Simply O3 is the one that introduced me to that. But what else, what is your protocol? Like, what do you do?
Well, there's two different facets to this question. What can we do to start the cleanse off? And then what can we do to regularly detox? So when you're doing a cleanse, you are essentially placing yourself into a more alkaline state. Being under oxidative stress, eating the wrong foods for your body. Everyone always asks me, Rachel, what is the best skin diet? And my answer is to test instead of guess that with a really great test kit that I can suggest. And it's based on your epigenetics, so you're eating the right foods for you. So what I like to do with my cleansing is I kick up the alkaline foods that I consume. I take a ton of amino acids. I also take different herbs to support detoxing and that are also antiparasitic. And I also bump it up with certain prescriptions. Now, I don't like to take prescriptions. However, in this case, it is something that really works for me. And of course, this isn't medical advice. This is educational information only. And if you think you have a medical condition, you must seek the guidance of a licensed physician. However, there are many options out there that are anti-parasitic that also have other types of protective qualities on the body as well that have been around for a really long time. So sometimes you can do really well with being alkaline. And if, depending on what's going on in your body, you can do tests to determine the levels of things like yeast and fungi and mold and parasites in the body. I would just assume you have them and
Mm-hmm.
regularly detox them. And these types of protocols I'm noticing are evolving all of the time, and they're actually just getting better and
Yeah.
better and more easy to follow. And you can do them in a bit of a shorter period of time. So let me know any questions you have about these types of detox protocols, and
Yeah.
then we can jump into like physical detox things that we can use
Yeah.
tools.
So first of all, like a nice anecdote as far as like skin health and detox and different things that we can do to improve our skin through eliminating parasites, etc. One of the more famous skincare brands sold from by professionals is actually made out of a peptide called LL47, which is really cool antifungal peptide. So that's number one. And number two, um, obviously, the things that are going to create a lot of stress in the body are just going to express themselves in the skin. So yeah, definitely. As far as like things that you do, you said you can mention a few things as far as herbs, things like that. What are some of the things that you think are, obviously, if someone needs specific advice, the best thing to do is just to reach out and have a consultation and have a one-on-one. That's, I think, obvious to get a tailored program. But what are some of the things that the general public can do in order to support good detoxification, cleansing, etc.?
Yes, absolutely. When we're getting into nitty gritty formulations and different products used, I have a number of solutions on my favorites biohacking page.
Mm-hmm.
And I do want to quickly actually touch on some of the research I found in the work of 40 plus year parasitologists.
Mm.
And there's one skin condition called Morgellons disease that can often present as adult acne. And actually, what it is a parasitic infection. One of my
Wow.
clients, a physician herself, she reached out to me and said, I talked to my practitioner about the fact that I think I have parasites because I came in contact with someone that had it on their arm, and now I have it. And then they wanted to give her a psychiatric evaluation.
Wow.
So in my education, I had about a page on parasites. So being a researcher, I love to look at what some of the more modern advancements are now, because obviously I graduated nursing school in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
And as a nurse, it's really important to be a resource. That's, one of our scopes of practice is to share resources. So if I don't know the answer, I can likely direct you to a resource that could be helpful. And that's the tricky thing about the Morgellons disease is a lot of people, practitioners don't know that adult acne could be confused with this and just how high of a prevalence it is in our North American population, which is why I presented this in my article so that more aesthetic practitioners can have an awareness,
Mm-hmm.
because when you're less toxic, you will have more powerful outcomes, better responses, faster healing when you're considering doing things like at-home skincare, at-home dermal rolling, in-clinic lasers, and other non-surgical and also surgical interventions too. The other thing that was brought up in one of the scientific roundtables, because you probably have some listeners with Lyme's disease.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people with Lyme's, it's really challenging, it's hard to get answers, and then they become biohackers. And I have heard in a scientific roundtable discussion that a lot of the Lyme's disease pathogen is actually housed in a parasite. So you
Mm.
could, in maybe some cases, obviously this isn't medical advice, you clear that and you clear Lyme's if
Hmm.
that's the case.
Yeah.
So I think that's very positive. I love that you brought up peptides. Peptides are still considered somewhat experimental. However, in my experience, some of the top longevity wellness aesthetics clinics, especially on the East Coast of North America, are getting into this more and more. And I am going to be doing a research paper on things like exosomes and the skin. This is very early days for all of these things. So don't worry, I'll be on the show to talk to you all about the research that I find for skin improvements. I love peptides, and the one for the skin that was researched back in 1998 was melanotan, which is actually more properly pronounced melanotin. And
Hmm.
then derived from that was PT141, which is a libido enhancer, which is approved, but melanotin is still considered experimental. And these are things that need to be prescribed and
Yeah.
be under the guidance of someone from. But if you're a biohacker, you've heard of peptides, and there's tons of research on this stuff. So if something's been around for about 7 to 8 years, then I'll evaluate it.
Hmm.
If it's still pretty new, I just always like to see long-term data. The same thing goes with skin lasers. Some of the lasers that were considered the best 10, 15 years ago, we started to actually see the result of those laser sessions on the skin, and how some lasers make the skin look much better than others. And this one laser in particular, over time, multiple sessions, actually made the skin look very thin, like an eggshell, very white.
Hmm.
And because the laser couldn't get contoured areas like between the brows, around the nose very well, you would have this demarcation in the skin where the laser was placed, it would be ultra smooth, look quite strange actually. And then where it wasn't applied, it would look totally different. The pores would still be large. So there's definitely various options on the market in regards to lasers that are better than others. And I'm not going to make laser statements here on the show.
Hmm.
Lasers are actually the number one point of litigation in the
Wow.
plastic surgery and dermatology world, because we see a lot of counterfeit devices on the market. Yeah, you can easily go online and search for lasers to buy. You'll find some $40,000 options that are actually counterfeit. So we're seeing not so good technology, fake technology, and also maybe practitioners that don't know how to use it as well
Or
as
even
they
not
could.
calibrated, right? Like
Oh
most
gosh, yeah.
lasers, yeah, need to be calibrated once in a while. So,
Yeah. I've actually had the pleasure of taking apart a $140,000 laser and servicing it. It's kind of like an oil change for a vehicle for a laser.
uh-huh. Yeah, so I think we can see it in a lot of different areas now in medicine where you could be looking at the same treatment, and obviously it's not a statement that you can always escape to. Yeah, there are people who charge different prices for the same thing. That's obvious, but in most cases, higher end clinics are doing a better job staying abreast with technology, staying abreast with maintenance protocols for their equipment, etc. And that is something that is very, very important in general to look at. We talked about radiation, right? Some of us will have to do CT, will have to do different things that have a radiation score next to them. It's called millisieverts, and for the most part, if a person, so you shouldn't have more than 50 millisieverts a year. That's like a benchmark there. You don't want to have 50 every year. You actually don't want to have any if you could avoid it, right? But if you are asking the provider of a specific technology that has an inclination for irradiation, and they do not provide you with a number of millisieverts that they are going to irradiate you with, that's a cause for concern. Just as an FYI, and that's
I'm
something that,
really glad you brought that up.
yeah, we can measure that. So I don't know if you have any experience with it, but I think knowledge, if someone wants to educate themselves as far as, like, again, millisieverts and radiational units, I think that's a good rabbit hole to go under, to go whatever it's called.
In some of my recent ongoing training for CMEs, I was watching a presentation of a body contouring
Mm.
session, and it uses radio frequency and grounding pads are used. And it's really interesting. I'm not going to, get too far into details of the history of some technologies,
Yeah.
but the way that a lot of technologies with lasers were first investigated and discovered would surprise you. I'm just going to leave it at that. We'll talk
Hmm.
off camera.
Sounds good.
And there are different types of lasers and energy types of options out there to reduce scarring, improve collagen, thicken the skin, reduce the appearance of pores. And there are some technologies out there that use specific frequencies that when they're applied, say, on the body, that energy is going into the body and then out the grounding pad.
Mm.
So what that's doing is basically putting a field directly through the body.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to see some long-term research on that, as well as even possibly some live blood analysis
Yeah.
on that as well. So skin, rejuvenation, body contouring, I definitely have a list of favorites that I like. And also, you mentioned exposure to radiation. I had to have an MRI done not so long ago, a cervical one for a car crash. I actually took my extensions out so that I could have that done. And my hair is, thicker and fuller than ever because I take such good care of myself as well.
Wow.
So yeah, that was an instance I had to have something done. So what did I do? I did my radiation bath, which I'm happy to tell you what those ingredients are, as well as some other things to mitigate that.
So yeah. So what is the ingredients of your radiation bath?
Yeah, this is a really old school bath that was initially suggested to people who worked in nuclear plants back in the
Wow.
day. So go home, bathe in this stuff. So, this is rough estimate, but you can basically find that information online. What I do is about 2 cups of Epsom salts, 1 cup of borax, 1 cup of baking soda, and then I put some of my favorite body oil that I offer in that as well. And you sweat, you soak in it for about 20 minutes, and that can be helpful, as well as doing saunas. So to sweat out different toxins. And ionic foot baths are very interesting how those work and the technology behind that, which we can get into.
Yeah. So maybe what are ionic foot baths?
Ionic foot baths are basically you have this box, and I have one that I suggest on my favorites page that I personally use. And an ionic foot bath has like basically a computer modules box. And then it has a wire that goes around your wrist to
Hmm.
have a current go through your body. And then the one that I like also has a waistband
Hmm.
to emit infrared light, near infrared radiation to help to detox the organs and the liver. And then you have a Tesla coil.
Wow.
Ionic foot baths use Tesla coils. So all of our I'm such a huge electromagnetic nerd. So all of our technology, modern technology, is based off Tesla technology. And there's a huge
Hmm.
debate with physicists around, Einstein versus Tesla, quantum versus Tesla and all this stuff. It's
Hmm.
it's quite interesting to observe this ongoing debate.
Yeah, for sure.
And so what's really cool is this Tesla coil, you put it in your foot tub. You can use any type of, bowl you have at home that's big enough for your feet, and I would say about 6 or 7 inches deep. Put a liner in there, plastic bag works fine. I hate to recommend plastic bag use, but in this case, the toxins that get pulled out of your body are disgusting and toxic. If you were to water a plant outside, you would kill it. That's how toxic
Wow.
this water is after the session. So, what happens is the Tesla coil is placed in the water with your feet, and you use reverse osmosis, distilled water with it, ideally. And then you're using salt to modulate the amplitude, the energy in the water going through your body, and it's
Wow.
sustained at about 30 to 45 minutes. You can adjust the time to your liking. You can do them side by side. So you could do them with your loved one, family member. Remember, I brought my Ionic foot bath over to my girlfriend's house in Vancouver, and we had a nice time just relaxing and chatting while we were detoxing.
Maybe it's not going to be your loved one after you see what comes out of their feet, but yeah.
After you do it, you're so glad you did it because the water is like this brown gunk. And so what it's pulling out are heavy metals and toxins and cellular debris.
Hmm.
So we can do long fasts, we can do intermittent fasting to stimulate autophagy, we can take senolytics to also help to get those senescent cells out. You can sauna, you can take binders to help pull out some heavy metals, and then you can also use Tesla coil technology
Hmm.
to pull things out also. So the baths, the saunas, the ionic foot baths, pop in some binders with those too. Like charcoal, for example, is a great binder for toxins. These are
Yeah.
things that I do all the
Okay.
time.
Okay, that's fantastic, and I think again, this is we can go into a rabbit hole there that is seemingly never ending. I think the entire idea of like how do we balance out toxins in, toxins out is extremely interesting. But within that discussion, how about the toxins in portion? How about food and the let's call it the accelerated skin aging that it can exert on the body. So what about food? What do you see as far as what did you talk about in your research? What do you see as far as being a consultant for the group that the famous people of the world as far as their skin is concerned? um, Talk to me a little bit about what's coming into our body.
Yeah. Well, first of all, this biohacking stuff, you're probably like, oh my gosh, you got to get this, got to get that.
Yeah.
Just start with the basics and really prioritize air, water, lighting, electromagnetics, and detoxing.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I would start first if you're like, what kind of tech should I get?
Mm-hmm.
Now, when it comes to toxins in our foods, that's going to be a separate paper. I stuck with air, water, lighting, electromagnetics, and
Got it.
detoxing for my research paper. I also talked a little bit about stem cells and exosomes and how this could be, the part of the future of skin and rejuvenation. Lots of people are already using these in different aspects with lasers and, healing and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to toxins in the foods, some of the biggest offenders are toxic seed oils.
Yeah.
And in fact, over the last few months with consultations, I'm seeing hydrogenated vegetable oil more and more in a lot of these mass produced skincare lines that
Yeah.
you'll hear a lot of people that you're probably following on social media talking about. I'm not going to say the brand name. That's not my style to put brands down on air here.
Yeah.
But what this tells me is maybe this company got bought and they're looking to increase their margins. You know all about that, Amitay, with having your
Yeah.
own skincare company. I'm formulating my own behind the scenes, and it is a lot of work to make an excellent product.
Yeah.
And a lot of companies are using seed oils now because they're cheap. They have an emollient type of quality to them. Canola oil is in just about everything, every type of prepackaged food. And you really have to read the ingredient labels. So hydrogenated vegetable oil, that's going to be out. Canola oil, that's going to be out. And then there's a few others as well. Olive oil, avocado oil, those are great options to cook with. Eat whole foods, not packaged foods. Even
Mm-hmm.
watch your salad dressings. Go to the grass-fed butter to, cook and fry things up with. As well as sugar, you do want to be reducing your sugar intake. Go for natural sugars and fruit instead. You're going to get the antioxidants. You're going to get the fiber also. You listening, I'm sure you're sweet enough as it is. Bleached flour is terrible for you
Uh-huh.
also. Gluten, some people can have higher rates of acne, skin issues with gluten. I know that I do experience more irritation on my back actually if I've had more exposure to canola oil. If
Hmm.
say I'm eating with family members and you want to be polite and you don't want to be that person that's like, oh my gosh, is there canola oil in this? Is there bleached flour in this? Right? I mean, in moderation, right?
Yeah.
Have your body as toxic free as possible so that you can live and enjoy life in moderation with these things because they're everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those are the biggest ones, the oils, the flour and gluten, sugar, obviously food dyes. So the best diet for the skin is actually going to be a diet more of whole foods and that you're preparing yourself and that you've also been able to test that those foods are right for you
Mm-hmm.
with some really sophisticated technologies out there. You no longer have to do the food elimination diets that, who has time for that? How many people are actually going to be able to do that accurately as well? I
Yeah,
kind of
that's true.
question that. When we have the tech available for like a couple $100.
Mm-hmm. and basically get tested for food sensitivities. And it's, there are a few tests. I'm sure you if people go to your recommendations on your website, they can find the tests that you recommend out of obviously a lot of experience and diving into research, etc. So that's a great place to start. In general,
Absolutely.
anything that we say here that Rachel has said, you can be sure that if you go to her website, you go to her recommended sources, you can find the things that she has the most experience, positive experience with, and recommends. But that's a great like overall discussion about food. It's really, the first step I feel like is not necessarily what is the silver bullet, what's the next superfood or whatever. It's really what you don't eat in general. Like what you are avoiding. That would be the main aspect of curating a healthy skin and lifestyle, etc. And then obviously you can find what's right for you, what boosts your energy, etc. What paradigm you want to believe in, whether it is paleo, keto, whatever that is. But it's mainly, if you look at like people who had drastic changes in their health because of nutrition, it's mainly through, and just everyone at home, just do a test. The next time you hear about someone that his health has completely changed because of the next fad or whatever fad within not even a fad, whatever theory they want to approach food with, it's mainly what they stopped eating rather than what they started eating. And that is obviously the right way to go. And then find your way. I can tell you, like, I had a problem with ketogenic diet because obviously I love doing sports. I love redlining my body. That's my what fires me up, quite literally. The problem was is that when I went 100% keto, I couldn't have sustained explosive energy for a long period of time if I want to do wrestling or jujitsu or whatever that is. So that wasn't right for me. I went back to paleo, and that was the best, all around for my body, for my health, etc. But that obviously came after I eliminated eating, the French fries, the processed sugars, hydrogenated oils, whatever that is. Yeah, so I wonder if you have anything else to say about food specifically that you think is relevant.
Well, absolutely. Being a fellow Brazilian Jiu Jitsu
Yeah.
fan myself, I mean, I wouldn't want to roll with somebody who is eating terrible foods and smells awful. Jiu-jitsu, for those of you who don't know, it's a martial arts, essentially Tetris for the body,
Mm-hmm.
and you're grappling and wrestling on the ground, and it's a lot of fun, but you're sweating a ton.
Yeah.
Here I am in class as one of the only ladies with a 250-pound guy over me, and they're just dripping sweat. And when we're as pure as possible, okay, here's the beautiful part to this. It's
Uh-huh.
a funny story. I'm trust me, I'm going somewhere with this.
Yeah.
The healthier you are, the more pure you are, the better you're going to smell.
Mm-hmm.
When I meet with certain people, say for example, about to do some rejuvenation for them and meet with them for the first time, and they have a certain smell to them, it's actually telling me something about their physiology. And when I don't eat the right foods, I notice that my scent shifts. So a really good sign that someone's healthy is that they actually have very little body odor because they're adequately detoxing as well. So notice if your body odor changes, and if something's smelling a little funky, evaluate what you've recently been eating. My favorite protein sources are farm raised eggs, really high in choline, really high in excellent amino acids, also very affordable, as well as sardines in olive oil. They're a smaller fish compared to tuna, for example, that have been around a lot longer and eat other fish. So the smaller fish, the better. Love grass-fed beef. Oh my gosh, there's nothing
Mm-hmm.
better than cooking up a good steak with a fantastic arugula salad with some avocado oil or olive oil. And then when I make a gravy, I take the drippings from the beef. I can see your mouth, you're
Yeah.
salivating a little bit. And I do a jus instead of a gravy, which
Uh-huh.
traditionally uses things like flour. And trust me, if you ever come to my house and I cook for you, that is going to be the one that makes you like me even more. And I do love grass-fed butter. And key vegetables that I avoid are things like kale. I don't eat a lot of beans because of the seeds. I don't have a lot of tomatoes because of the seeds. However, quote unquote ancient type of cooking practices for tomatoes was taking off the skins
Mm-hmm.
and then boiling it. And that can reduce your exposure to lectins,
Mm.
which are actually inflammatory. So, kale, bell peppers, those are some of the two heaviest hitters. So, there's a lot of vegetables out there that are actually in this category of foods called nightshades,
Yeah.
which are terrible for you. So, take a specific gut intelligence test kit. There's lots of different food tests out there to help you learn which foods are right for you. And I don't actually eat chicken at all. I've heard some things about glycolic end products with
Yeah.
that, things like that, glycation.
Yeah.
So I am aware of that. So going for eggs instead is much better. And I just feel better with more like eggs, sardines, grass-fed beef. If I get sausages, I know where that farm is and I know what those ingredients are. They don't have gluten, they don't have nitrates, they don't have MSG. Even better yet, if they don't even have a casing around it.
Yeah.
So when you go to the grocery store, it should take you probably twice as long as it used to because you're actually reading the labels.
Oh yeah, I can get lost in Whole Foods for a day, especially Whole Foods since they got bought out. They're just not they lack some integrity they had before. So you read
Yep.
labels a lot more. Even if you go to, I mean, it's very if you want to understand how their allegiance shifted, aside from the fact that they have now sweets in the aisle and stuff, you really should read what they are cooking with. Like go because they list the ingredients. Like if you go to their prepared food section, you'll see the seed oils, the vegetable oils. These are the things that they are cooking with. So, I mean, shout out to a restaurant in Austin called Picnic that we frequented when we were there because they're incredible. They're like not cooking with seed oils. They're cooking to your preferences as far as like your diet. It was so refreshing to really see the future of restaurants in front of our eyes, and I think it's incredible. It's an incredible evolution that we're living within. Exactly, in the beginning we kind of maybe off air even we talked about the consciousness of the world, where it's going, the forces that are being exerted on the collective of who we are and individuals. But I think the flip side of that, we can see pockets of goodness of kind of the appropriate lifestyle for human beings that are being created and that we can enjoy if we are educated enough to seek them and to be able to differentiate between a Whole Foods ready-made food and something like Picnic. Shout out to Picnic in Austin.
I look forward to when I'm in Orlando at the conference to
Yeah.
finding some excellent restaurants there. I know that us and a few of our other friends got together and had a great time.
Yeah.
One of the things that came up just as you were talking about this, this show's all about beauty and
Yeah.
biohacking, right? So a lot of people, they want to biohack to have better skin and slow cellular aging. And other people, they just want to biohack so they feel their best, their brain works better, and they have the energy that they need to actually do the work that they're here to do, their dharma
Yeah.
and all that stuff. So I'd love to bring up something that I think I definitely want to talk about with all of you, the positive and negative attributes to skin and
Mm-hmm.
rejuvenation, and also positive and negative emotions and how that plays into
Absolutely. Yeah.
our skin and aging process. This is
Yeah.
like the cherry on top kind of stuff that like
Yes.
gives you this beautiful energy when you walk into a room and
Yeah.
have everyone notice you for all the right reasons. So, the positives to wanting to be your most beautiful, healthiest version are self expression. You're going to have the confidence and the clarity to express yourself coherently when your brain works better. You're going to be more creative. I know we were talking about that before we started recording Amitay and some of the
Yeah.
things we do to spark our creativity and the
Mm-hmm.
work that we do with our shows. Having enthusiasm, being happier, being in these positive emotional states, and the sociability concept here of presenting our most beautiful, healthy, energized versions will allow us to be more social. And at the end of the day, we're seeking community. We're
Yeah.
not meant to be isolated. We're highly social beings. So, a main driver, one of the whys to beauty that I teach on is, why do you want to undergo rejuvenation? A lot of
Hmm.
people think it's the vanity, that's the shadow negative side, which we'll talk about. But the underpinning is confidence and being able to have beautiful interactions with ourselves and other people, places, and things.
Yeah.
Now, the negative aspects to wanting to become our most beautiful selves, use skincare that might be a little bit more expensive than what you get on the shelves, but is going to be cleaner and deliver higher concentrations of actives, and
Hmm.
maybe, do rejuvenation. What
Yeah.
do you think the shadow sides of that are for people?
Well, we can start, what I like to do is really to go to the far ends of things and go from there. I think that's the most important, right? We want to explain to someone why sugar is bad. We'll go and show them like research that cancer can be exacerbated through metabolic dysfunction. We'll show them like liver disease and things like that, right? And the same thing when we talk about skin rejuvenation, we can see where it goes bad. Whether it is the fact that too much of it, we'll start from the emotional side. It can be a hijacked by our ego, by sides of our psyche that can run away with it, and we can develop mental illness out of our need to look better and to express ourselves in a certain way, or to kind of get out that image that we have of who we are in our head, to get it to be expressed visually. I think it's a very difficult thing for us in the Western world, or in the world in general. Any place that has a mirror is going to create some kind of body dysmorphia, right? Some kind of inability to accept who is that person that looks at us from the mirror, that looks back at us. So I think that's the scariest thing, developing some kind of a mental attachment to the way that you look and being dissatisfied. On the physical side of it, going to the extremes, we create so much obviously the easy thing is to mention Michael Jackson, right? But we can work on our skin with rejuvenation processes, whether it is at home or in the office, to the extreme of creating a stress on the skin that creates worse results than not doing anything. I mean, that's called a biphasic dose response, right? There is too little, there's just enough, and there's too much. And that is going to be in most areas in life. But when we're talking about the skin, since we are concentrating on one organ and kind of sanctifying the performance of that organ, the line is very finite.
Yeah, absolutely. And when people are seeking rejuvenation, if they are toxic,
Hmm.
they're not going to have as fast healing. I
Yeah.
mean, I clued into this, treating biohackers back in the day
Yeah.
and seeing just how fast they were recovering. I couldn't believe it. A skin resurfacing laser that would typically take someone 5 days to heal from, they were healed in 1 to 3 days. So that's what really got my wheels turning. Wow, if we want great skin, if we want to have the best outcomes possible, you got to do the inner work, and the skin will always be a reflection
Yeah.
of how excellent things are running behind the scenes. So the shadow side of beauty and rejuvenation, conceitedness. People always say, I feel really vain about this, and in consults, the
Yeah.
vanity is the biggest word I hear. Carelessness
Hmm.
comes down to buying products and gimmicks that are just going to go in the graveyard skincare drawer, which we've all had those over the years,
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
So carelessness with, toxic products, as well as, who are you supporting behind
Yeah.
that company, and just wasting your money,
Yeah.
right, on things that seem too good to be true, that probably are. And the secretiveness, right? Rejuvenation has a cost, and sometimes people will keep that cost away from their
Yeah.
partner because they're embarrassed and they're wanting to keep it secret.
Yeah.
And so the secretiveness is a really interesting part with skincare and rejuvenation and beautification. And then what's also really interesting, especially in our culture, is the comparative aspect,
Mm-hmm.
is the comparing ourselves, to what we're seeing on social media, which a lot of times is filtered. I know one of my girlfriends, like 15 years ago, she was showing me how she, tweaks her face and her waistline. I'm like, you can't tweak me. Like, just leave me. I don't edit my photos. Like, I go live. What you see is what you get. Because
Yeah.
there's nothing worse than when you meet someone for the first time and they've been editing all their photos, and you meet them, you're like,
Yeah.
um, okay. So be you. And
Yeah.
when you are your most powerful, optimized, purest, most radiant version, that's going to sparkle. Even if, and I see this in my clients that are 50 to 80, even up to 90. Sure, they got fine lines, wrinkles, signs of aging, but they have their body, mind, spirit, energy practices dialed
Mm-hmm.
in, and they feel great on the inside, and they're wanting to do something to the skin to, undo their glory days in the sun. And, they oftentimes also have spiritual practice, grounding practice, really great physical activities, sense of community. So all of these things play into beauty more than I think people realize. And when you talk about people that look overdone, you referenced a celebrity in the
Uh-huh.
past. I see this when I'm in different cities, and I was in California for a number of months recently, and I would take a look at who's walking and how they look, and I could see this one woman. She was, very rejuvenated. She couldn't move
Uh-huh.
her face, tons of volume, not a brown spot or blemish on her, not a fine line or wrinkle, but she looked totally flat. Her
Mm-hmm.
eyes were completely flat. And then I see this other lovely Hindu woman with a bindi on, and she's, probably in her 70s, and just bright and smiling, and her eyes were bright. That stuff translates. Your
Yeah.
energy translates. So being a beautiful biohacker, you're set.
Exactly. I wonder when, obviously in the future we're going to be able to achieve many more things in relative ease to what we think of today. But I wonder if having cool skin would ever be something, Yeah, if you're completely flat and you're rejuvenated to the gills, but you really don't have any expressions to make, you really cannot be engaging. By the way, there is an anecdote. It's out of Berkeley, I believe. They did a research showing that if you cannot move your face, you are less able to understand other people's emotions being expressed in their face. And why is that? Is because as you look at someone else expressing themselves, you are subconsciously micro mimicking that expression, and that helps our brain decipher what the other person is doing. So if you're scowling, I'm going to micro scowl, and then my brain's going to tell me, oh, that means that the other person is angry because that's what you're doing when you're angry. And people that cannot completely contract their face, you are missing out on a lot of, either it is empathy or just understanding this subconscious communication someone is communicating to you.
I love that you brought this up,
Yeah.
Amitay. So this is what I've become really excited about over the last few years, especially being on more stages myself, presenting more,
Mm-hmm.
obviously as a teacher, that's what I'm here to be. And this concept of expression. So the rejuvenation procedure out there that modulates your expressions are neurotoxins, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
lots of different brands on the market, many different names, some brand new ones as well too,
Yeah.
and others that have been around since the 90s. So, in fact, neuromodulators, there have been studies to show that when people can't frown and furrow their brows as much, they don't experience as many negative emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Very
True.
interesting.
Yeah.
On the flip side, though, however, if someone is overtreated and they can't move their face, and by the way, different neurotoxins on the market have, one of them feels like a firm hold hairspray, your face isn't going to move in a wind tunnel. The other one is more like a soft hold hairspray. You have a
Yeah.
little bit more movement with it. You get the eyebrow lift, you get the jowl shrinking, which is off label, which I wrote about in my jawline papers, because I write papers on
Mm-hmm.
rejuvenation procedures as well. being able to emote is very key. And I actually think about this for our younger generation children with parents that have lots of neurotoxins,
Mm-hmm.
modulators in their face, and they can't emote very much. How
Mm-hmm.
will that impact development?
Yeah.
And the other thing you mentioned, which I love that you talk about, because I talk about this in the School of Radiance program and also on my podcast as well, the Always Radiant Skin podcast, formerly
Mm-hmm.
Rachel Varga podcast. It's a
Mm-hmm.
whole rebrand. I'm going through a huge transformation
We're
myself too.
we're we're here to support that rebranding. Yeah, but
Thank
what
you.
were you saying?
The micro expressions are everything. So
Yeah.
I have friends that are extremely animated and, they use their whole face when they communicate. And I used to be a peds ICU trach vent nurse. So I had to
Mm-hmm.
do sign language and convey with my hands and my face to these dear ones I was looking after. And I would just see the facial contortions in some of my colleagues. I was like, oh, that's going to catch up with you over time. So the beauty about the micro expression and the way that we can use our voice
Mm-hmm.
is so key to come across as our most beautiful, most respectable, put together version. When we talk and we're not overly expressive, when we show a micro expression, that's actually going to be more impactful than speaking with full face animation all the time. It's like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, they actually showed some
Mm-hmm.
type of expression and it actually is going to carry more weight. And people like Angelina Jolie do this all the time. In fact, she is a master at the micro expressions, and she's gorgeous. She's beautiful. She's one of the beauty sexualized icons out there. If I could think of one that has
Yeah.
this feminine energy that is so powerful, and she doesn't have to put it all out there. She uses specific type of gestures and postures, and it's very appealing to
Yeah.
male counterparts. I could see you nodding along.
It's funny. It's funny to me what your connotations in your head are and what are mine. I was like, Tony Soprano, and you're like Angelina Jolie. Yeah, but definitely, I think it's funny to think of a correlation between inflammation and facial expressions or body expressions. But inflammation is key because inflammation is the communication for repair in the body, right? When we do microneedling, for that matter, what we're really doing is creating controlled inflammation.
You got
Everything
it.
else is, it's basically like derived off of that. But that if we have inflammation that is ongoing in the body, that's like static noise that really income is basically like weighing down the system and creating a lot of false noises, and the system becomes like tired, etc. And it's funny to equate it to also like facial expressions. Like if you're doing facial expressions in every small word that comes out of your mouth, we're going to kind of tune that out. We're not even going to you know you're not going to create a lot of impact like that. But if you talk passionately, you talk about whatever you want, but when you want to emphasize a point, you naturally express some emotion with your face. That is when we can drive a point home. So both you know in body processes and in intercommunications, it is the modulation between no signal and signal that is in fact impactful, as far as I derive from what you said.
Yes, and warmth is a big part of that as well.
Yeah.
And for all of you listening, try and watch this episode. And also really pay attention to people you are learning from and
Hmm.
take a good look into their eyes.
Yeah.
The eyes tell us so much about someone's values, their integrity as well. If you are listening to someone and their eyes are constantly darting this way, that way, there's some NLP stuff happening.
Hmm.
And I actually love studying. I got to drop someone here. Chris
Hmm.
Voss. He
Yeah.
is, Chris Voss.
Of
Yeah,
course.
he
Yeah.
is an FBI hostage negotiator extraordinaire.
Hmm.
And his style of communication and framing conversations is so excellent. We all know those people that are really loud and boisterous. They enter a room, they're the life of the party. And then there's this other person over here who's very cool, calm, and collected. And when they speak, people pay attention
Yeah.
because what they got to say is probably important.
Yeah, it's like he calls it like the map of attention or something like that.
I love
If
him.
anyone wants like an introduction to Chris Voss, you can read things that he
Never
wrote. It's
split the difference.
exactly.
So good.
But what I really like is his masterclass. There's an app, there's a masterclass, I think .com or whatever. He has a course there that's very interesting. So if anyone wants like a taste of Rick Voss and you're maybe more of an auditory or visual person rather than reading, I recommend both, but I recommend the masterclass if that's your style. Maybe, so we don't exhaust people's attention. We make sure that this is impactful. I really want to make sure that we're hitting home the emotional aspect as far as a stressor on our skin, right? When we talk, for example, I have a talk that I get invited to create to do a lot, and that's about those senescent cells and how they drive overall aging. But really, what they do is they communicate with a part. So our skin communicates with a part of our brain that interprets stress and relays stress for the rest of our body, which is called the HPA axis. And those senescent cells, obviously, they create inflammation, they generate inflammation in the brain, but really it's that stress mechanism, that overall stress communication that is driving aging through that mechanism. And stress is a big part of aging throughout the body. But obviously, as we know from anyone from presidents to Emperor Palpatine in Star Wars, everyone ages when they're exposed to a lot of stress. So maybe what are some of anecdotes that you have about this specifically? But also, I really would like to know your strategies as someone that is so high performing, such as yourself. I'm sure you can't avoid stress. So, what are some of the strategies to mitigate stress?
This is an excellent question for you to ask me. I actually don't get asked this question as often as I would like.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to being our most beautiful, our most radiant version, resilience is also a big part of this.
Mm-hmm.
The mindset of being a beautiful, magnetic human, for the ladies and the gents, really comes down to being in a positive emotional state.
Yeah.
When we're in positive emotional states, our face are going to show these expressions and emotions, and they're going to be warm and happy. No one wants to hang out with a,
sour puss.
Sour Sally, right? You're not going to have a lot of friends if you're in a negative emotional state all the time. And in fact, one of the things that I've had to train myself to do to become resilient, and I'm going to be writing a book on what I did in 4 days. You wouldn't believe it. Next time I see you, I gave you a little glimmer last time we hung out.
Yeah.
But it didn't make my skin break out. I didn't get rashes. I was still having excellent sleep scores. I didn't lose all my hair. And, this was like 6 months of, I completely reshaped my life.
Wow.
Because I did the detoxing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did a long fast. And then I knew in my heart and my mind and my intuition with my body that the situation I was in was no longer serving me positively.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people stay in that. They don't have the courage or the faith or the value in themselves or the personal boundaries to live in a way that is most supportive of them and their highest, for them to do what they came here to do and love others as much as possible in the process. So there's this concept of biohacking and taking all your adaptogens and staying as pure and toxin free as possible. And I did that for years, and there's no way I would have been able to get through what I got through, which I'll for sure write a book on one day, my biography, if anyone cares about that. But I think it could be, sure. I think it could be really inspiring, to be honest, when I really share the details of what I've gone through. It's top secret right now. Having body, mind, spirit, energy practices are absolutely paramount for slowing aging, reducing stress, and staying in positive emotional states. Not to mention, when you do your at-home dermal rolling with my appropriate guidance, I've been working with rolling since 2011, you're going to create better collagen. There's multiple different types of collagen that can form. When you have the antioxidants, you may be supplementing some collagen, taking your omegas, your toxic bucket's empty. You'll have better responses with the skincare products you're putting on, with the microneedling, with the rejuvenation. And you can go through tough times and not have it wear on your face. Not to mention, if you're going through a tough time, psychological stress-wise, emotionally, that will put a taxing on your body. And in fact, that is not the time to get rejuvenation. I can't tell you how many times men and women have sought me out over the years. They lost a loved one. They went through a divorce. Something happened with their kids. Something happened with their business. Their whole life shifted. They see it on their face. They want to do rejuvenation, but they're not doing the inner work.
Yeah.
Right? So doing the inner work prior to rejuvenation is something I can always suggest, because doing the heavy lifting has a beautiful positive benefit on the way that you look at yourself and your interactions with people, places, and things. So I'd love to give everyone some examples of negative emotions. We'll talk about Sour Sally for a second here. So
no offense to all the Sallys in the that are listening to us.
I know.
Go ahead.
We had to come up with some consonants there. Okay. So loneliness, embarrassment, depression, anger, anxiety, selfishness, indecisive, dominating, compulsive, judgmental, guilt, regret, inadequacy, apathy, boredom, believe it or not, greedy, ruthlessness, hateful, critical, despair, self-pity, grief, remorse, rejection, doubtful, shame, dread are huge negative emotions. Those are very, 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 very low on the consciousness spectrum. If you are truly wanting to show up, be beautiful, be a biohacker, you're going to start to likely understand that everything is about frequency. There's very low frequencies. You know, that we are in a world of duality, right? Good, bad, light, dark, North Pole, South Pole. It's just how this world operates. It's a world of duality. There's no, in between about that. Unless you want to, have an argument with science, and there's even that too. Okay, so another tangent. Let's talk about positive feelings. These are going to be much higher on the energetic vibration spectrum. Okay, so people that you learn from, right? We were talking about this before we started recording. People we respect that are great teachers. They're usually in these positive emotional states and are resonating at a much higher frequency.
Yeah.
And if you care about being a great human and making an impact in the world, the way you're going to do that is banish negative emotions. This is going to have tremendous impacts on your stress levels. When you're in a negative emotional state, you're going to be stressed out. Your skin's going to show it. So literally retraining yourself, it's taken me about 6 months to truly learn this, especially being aware of word choices. I don't use words like morning, right? Why do I want to mourn the morning? So I say in my AM routine or when I woke up, and I don't say amazing anymore. I don't want to be amazed about something. I don't say wonderful. I don't want to, be wondering about something all day long. And so our words are very powerful, right?
Yeah.
So again, we're ending this session off with frequency and vibration and word choice for being radiant and beautiful. So positive feelings, positive emotional states, these are what I encourage each and every one of you to be in as much as possible. And when you notice those negative emotional states come in, it's going to take time, but at some point you'll get really good at this. And this is an excellent way to manage your stress as a strategy. Creative, sensitive, inspired, imaginative, faithful, love, joy, peace, serenity, compassion, hopeful, enthusiastic, contented, accepting, expectant, sincere, harmony, compatibility, consistency, faithfulness, loyal, true, dedicated, steadfast, elation, enjoyment, fulfillment, agreeable, glad, gratified, satisfied, grateful. These are all examples of positive feelings. I mean, you turn on any type of show these days, and it's all like, fear about this, that, and the other thing. But it's our job to restore that balance, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, that's basically like every show that you have is like it's basically like, we have this guy, whatever, this girl, everything goes well. And then in the middle, something really hard is happening. It's very hard. There is drama. And in the end, the drama subsides. But I think that even like in educating our mind and our consciousness to believe that every good experience is leading up to some challenge that we need to address is not necessarily positive. I mean, to accept good things happening to you, I think is one of the best things that you can do in life. And that obviously cultivates also being generous and things like that. as an anecdote to language that is used, my father is which I never talk about on the podcast, but my father is obviously an inspiration to me. He's our advisor here at Young Goose, and he is an amazingly successful person within the fire protection. He's an engineer, and he's a world renowned as a fire protection expert, especially to prevent things like the BP explosion back then in off the coast of Louisiana, especially for gas and oil. And I remember, going to his work when I was a teenager, to the company that he was heading. And what blew me away is the words that I got corrected from using, like the word hard, or the word, I can't, obviously that was in Hebrew too, so to translate exactly is a little bit difficult, but words like difficult instead of challenging. And I remember like going back to school, to middle school, and using words like quest. And people looked at me like I'm out of my mind. What are those words that you're using? Because these were words that, over summer visiting his job, I adopted, and that have completely changed my frame of mind, even though the day-to-day life didn't require anything different, right? I was supposed to feel the same as I felt before, but only by changing the words, I changed the experience of what it means to be alive.
That's excellent. And yeah, when you mention things such as hardships and
Yeah.
challenges, I look at them as obstacles,
Uh-huh.
right? We can overcome those, especially
Mm-hmm.
when you're biohackers and you're going to stay beautiful in the process because you got all the tools, you got the adaptogens, you got the hacks. You can become more resilient.
Yeah.
And some of the words I don't use are, that's wild, that's crazy. I'll use words more like excellent,
Uh-huh.
things like that.
Fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay, so Rachel, we spent an hour and a half, and again, I feel like each one of those little subjects that we went over could be its own hour and a half. But as people can tell from talking to you, you really are a wealth of knowledge to anything to anything biohacking and health. But especially if someone's end goal is to look in the mirror and, as far as their journey, get an attaboy, right? Having a complete health journey, not only like getting an injection or whatever, and having the mirror telling them you are doing it correctly. That is really what I like about you the most. I have a lot of things that I like about you, but you embody the the doing things the right way, as far as our skin is concerned and our health journey is concerned. So I would highly recommend consuming your content. Obviously, anyone who's listened to our podcast in the past knows how to reach you and learn more from you. But maybe for those who are stumbling upon this podcast and that's their first experience with you, where can they learn more? What are the best ways to consume the Rachel experience, if you would?
All right. Well, the best way to consume the free stuff is on the Always Radiant Skin podcast. I do
Mm-hmm.
lots of solo episodes where I kind of like tiptoe around a lot of these different types of topics.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have my one-on-one client sessions, and I love seeing my clients win. I did a follow-up with Michelle the other day. I've been working with her for a couple of years now. She's in her late 40s. She probably listens to this show too, actually, so she'll know. And I love seeing the transformation. She says, I'm doing what you're recommending. My clients, my friends and family are like, what do you do for your skin? And, when you do all these things behind the scenes, you ramp up your at-home skincare using non-toxic products like what you offer as well, at-home dermal rolling, your biohacking, all that, maybe some rejuvenation,
Mm-hmm.
right? The slowing aging concepts, that's what I dive into with my one-on-one clients with ongoing support. And yes, I talk a lot more about the behind the scenes stuff that I do
Mm-hmm.
more in a one-on-one container. And use promo code YoungGoose15 for 15% off of your one-on-one with me. And then I can thank Amitai for sending you.
Yeah.
Check out my favorites biohacking page where, sauna, foot baths, the alkaline detox, the food test, that's all there with promo codes to help you out. Also, my skin camps. I do seasonal skin camps where I take you into my restroom and I teach tutorials. No,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to be teaching dermal rolling for Doug and Sally on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not for everybody, and I'm okay with that. But I teach things like facial gua sha, how to optimize your skincare and rejuvenation every season and what to
Mm-hmm.
focus on, skincare, body care, hair care, biohacking for beauty, and of course, dermal rolling and advanced dermal rolling protocols. Those are my skin camps.
Got
And
it.
I do have one running right now. So go to rachelvarga.ca. And for those high achievers that have done the skincare, they've done the rejuvenation stuff, they're looking for that next level of having the confidence to enter a room and have people notice them, the right people notice them for the right reasons, how to speak with confidence, how to present with confidence, what to do with your hands and feet when you're
Mm-hmm.
talking to others, and be received in a more positive way, and truly the depths of the psychological skill set necessary to be as beautiful and radiant as possible. That's at
Mm-hmm.
theschoolofradiance.com. So that's for those high achievers that get that really behind the scenes look into my life, what I do and what I've learned. But everything's over at rachelvarga.ca.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're a pleasure to listen to, and obviously, when you are consuming something on a consistent basis, whether it is people that listen to us or people who would listen to your podcast, a lot of the times I believe it's the same people, but
Yeah.
people who surround themselves with those sources of knowledge. Obviously, we are the average of the of the people around us. Some people say the five people around us. I believe you're basically the average of the information that you're getting, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be physical people. I mean, it doesn't have to be people that you can touch. Make sure you surround yourself with the information that you would like to embody, and I think there is no better source than you, Rachel. And I say it with I mean, I say it as much off air as I say it on air. So I highly appreciate the time that you gave us today. It's not taken for granted, and I highly value our friendship and connection. And I want you to know that.
Thank you. I'm grateful to each and every one of you listening. You're hearing these good vibes,
Mm-hmm.
these positive attributes to being a beautiful biohacker
Yes, ma'am.
that are going to serve you for many years, and lead by example. Those little ones you might have in your home, or those paying attention to what you're doing to be performing and communicating in a certain way and doing good things in the world, raising your consciousness, your vibration, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We simply need more humans like you, so keep it up.
Amen. Right, Rachel. Thank you very much. Before we end today's episode, I'm going to take some time to answer some listener questions. If you would like your questions to be answered on the podcast, you can ask your questions in a review on Apple Podcasts, and we will be sure to answer it either in the next episode or an episode that is specifically suitable for it. So the first question that we have is about blue light mitigation or blocking, which is very obviously is something that we touched on in this episode. Which products provide protection? Which Young Goose products provide protection from blue light? So first and foremost, we have our Bio-C peptide spray, which can be used throughout the day to protect your skin from the harmful effects of high energy visible light, which blue light is a part of it. We also have light mitigating effects in our hyperbaric mask, care moisturizer, obviously our Bio Shield, which is our SPF slash bio protector. We have a very strong antioxidant that's going to help with bio barrier and in our adaptogenic HA firming boost. So these are the products that are suitable as far as blue light protection. Another product related question is what products contain GHKCU or tripeptide 1 or copper peptide? These are some of the names for it. And we only use it really in eye care. And that is because this is the skin that can really use GHKCU, copper peptide, without any manipulation to the skin barrier and without puncturing the skin and still have a good effect. We are working on ways to integrate this peptide into more products, but it is normally really not bioavailable when applied on the skin, and also exhausts the effect that it can stimulate in the skin quite quickly. So within a month, the results are not sustainable. So we're working on that, and stay tuned. The third question that we have is what type of sunblock or what kind of sun protectant we are using in our sunblock. And we are using non-nano zinc oxide. And this is the best mineral sunblock you can use. It does not leave you with a white cast on your skin through a special process that we pass the zinc oxide through, but without having it absorbed to your bloodstream. So all of the good and none of the bad. And these were the three questions for today. If you would like your question to be answered on the podcast, you can ask your question in a review on Apple Podcasts, and we will be sure to answer it in the next episode or an episode that is suitable for it. So thank you everyone for listening to today's episode, and we'll see you here in our next episode. Goodbye.